2 minutes, finish up your dessert, your chocolate cake, and chipotle raspberry tofu sauce, sliced kiwi, orange, and raspberry. And that. Let's join me in expressing our appreciation to the Marriott staff and to, yes, so great. This is so, the room's so packed, I don't know how they make their way around everybody. And also to the Soy Foods Council, all our soy sponsors for coming up with the dishes, and that they were terrific. Be sure and look at your menu on there. That's so, yeah. No, let's give them a round of applause. Come on. That's, also want to encourage you to look on your table. And here is our list of sponsors. Please pick, some of the sponsors are here, and it would mean a lot to me if they saw you looking at this and look at it and nod approvingly. And come on, help me out now. Yeah. I want to, Kirk Leeds, before I neglected point that you have some special guests here from China and here, so maybe I could ask all of them to just stand up so we can give you a World Food Prize welcome. And that's so, the Chinese delegation, yeah, stand up, yeah. Some of them from Hebei, which is Iowa's sister state, and some of the where are the students from Hebei who are here? In the room, or did they go out for lunch somewhere? And that. Yeah. Yes. And that. All right, there they are. All right. There are two. Yes, there. Okay. So I want to now introduce to you someone who's very, very special to me. And I met him about 6 years ago. I was at the Agra Forum in Ghana. I was going there to present our Borlaug medallion to Kofi Annan. And I was sitting in the breakfast room at the hotel all alone. And this gentleman was sitting on the other side of the room. And he was very kind and thoughtful, and saw me there, and we got together and we talked over breakfast. And it was one of those conversations where after about 5 or 6 sentences into it, you know that you want to pay absolute attention to every word that's being said, because the person saying it, so insightful, so experienced, that such broad ideas. And I watched, at the time, he was a vice president of Agra, was so good at what he did about sharing his ideas and publicizing them that he received the CAST Borlaug Communication Award. It's here. We had him come and then speak in his capacity when he became Minister of Agriculture of Nigeria. And he was sensational at that, spoke at our breakfast in the morning. And then as I watched Nigeria just become so incredibly vital, and so many things happening in the agricultural area. And then he was up for the Forbes Man of the Year in Africa. And it was against all these business guys and investment people. And I thought, well, probably somebody who's in agriculture, I don't know what chance he'll have. Too bad. And then he won. And deservedly so. Because he's the most dynamic leader, in my view, on the continent. And then when his name was up for consideration to be president of the African Development Bank. I took every occasion I could to tell everybody I could find in Washington and in the US government about how important it would be to have somebody who was from agriculture in that position. Because after all, that's the issue for Africa for the next 30 years. So this morning, when World Bank President Jim Yong Kim was speaking and mentioned he had just been, President Kim just re-elected for a second term. I mentioned that 2016, our speaker had been elected to his first term as head of the African Development Bank. All the issues and all the problems, all the crises we heard that are possible yesterday, when they happen, we will have the best chance of dealing with them because we will have Jim Yong Kim at the World Bank, and we will have His Excellency Akinwumi Adesina, my dear friend Akin, heading the African Development Bank and providing the vital African and global leadership. So please join me in welcoming His Excellency Akinwumi Adesina. And then, and when he's done speaking, he has very graciously agreed to answer some questions. So out here in the sea of humanity, someplace there are microphones, and I'll come back up and we'll find people with questions. Over to you.
Ambassador. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ambassador. Your Excellency, President Banda, former President of Malawi, Professor Swaminathan, Ambassador Queen, the Borlaug family, John and Janet Rowan, it's good to see you. The Warful Prize laureates, all of you are here, and the new ones, of course. The Soybean Councils, thank you for a very great lunch. I think it's a very healthy lunch. But also the future leaders of agriculture and all the young folks that are here. Wherever you are, can you just wave so I can see you? Because the future belongs to you in agriculture. Please give it up to them. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to be here with you today. It's such a great honor for Ambassador Queen, the President of Warful Prize Foundation, to have invited me here as a keynote speaker today. You know, every time that you see him, I don't know how he does it. He moves around all the time. I am convinced that he's got renewable energy inside of his body because I don't know how he does it. But I must tell you something, that in a world where it's very difficult to find faithful people, a world where it's very difficult to find people who are loyal to actually promoting the legacy of others, I think to have somebody like him is just incredible. The passion, the commitments that he brings to this, please give it up to him. He's a good man. And of course, Professor Swaminathan, the board and staff of the Warful Prize Foundation, for all the great work you all do. Congratulations to you all as you celebrate your 30th anniversary of the Warful Prize. I applaud and congratulate the Warful Prize winners for 2016 for their transformative work on developing power-fortified crops. My most recent interaction with this team was 2 years ago when Howard Bowes and his team at Harvest Plus organized a second global forum on biofortification in Kigali, Rwanda. I was, just like now, also the keynote speaker there. I was, at the time, the Minister of Agriculture for Nigeria, and I remember Professor Swaminathan was there with us in Kigali. I was a minister in agriculture in Nigeria then, where I had helped to massively push for large-scale cultivation of biofortified crops. So impressed was I with the potential of this work that I said to Howard and his team, you deserve a Warful Prize. So you can imagine how thrilled I was when Howard and his colleagues, Maria Andrade, John Lowe, my dear sister, Robert Wanaga, were named as winners of the World Food Prize 2016. Congratulations. Today I speak to you, as Ambassador Queen said, as President of the African Development Bank, the first person with an agriculture background to be President of a multilateral development bank. Whoa, just think about that. So agriculture is obviously a major priority for me. Well, if it wasn't, what else would I be doing, right? It was great to have my friend Jim Kim speak this morning, and I was so thrilled to listen to him. You got a medical doctor at the head of the World Bank. You got somebody from agriculture leading the African Development Bank. Well, what else do you need to solve a problem of food and nutrition? I wish my mentor, Dr. Norman Borlaug, was here to hear how refreshing that is. After all, it was him who told me 10 years ago, in quote, exactly what he said to me: go and score goals for agriculture in Africa, end of quotes. On that memorable winter morning, as we walked together on the streets of New York on my way to Rockefeller Foundation, where I worked at the time, and I know that I've got some of my former president of Rockefeller Foundation here, Gordon Conway and Judy Rodin, and other board members. I would have told them, yes, sir, the work has started, and I now oversee the resources to get it done. Ladies and gentlemen, like everyone in this room, every time the World Food Prize is given, it reminds me of Dr. Norman Borlaug. He was the man who fed the world and started the World Food Prize. It also reminds me of John Rowan Sr., the man who saved the World Food Prize. They are no longer here with us today. Yeah. They have gone to a better place in heaven. But they left the world a better place. We love and miss them both. As I think about the nice meal we're having this afternoon, I think of the need to make the world much better, especially for millions who lack access to food. That is why focusing on agriculture and raising agricultural productivity as a principal source of food is critical. Your choice of the theme of this year's World Food Prize, Food as Medicine, is so important in informing our better understanding of the intricate linkages between food and medicine. Which is more important, food or medicine? Well, it reminds me of my own experience. My father, like many of his time, wanted me so desperately to be a medical doctor like Jim Kim. At the age of 14, I had passed my high school exams, like all the high schoolers here today, and sat for the examinations to the university. My father always filled my forms. And his first choice was medicine. The second choice was veterinary medicine. And the third choice was dentistry. One way or the other, I will become a doctor. Well, every time I took the exams, 2 years in a row, universities will admit me for agriculture, but not medicine. Now, my father, who grew up as a poor farmer, never wanted me near agriculture at all. Left with no choice after 2 years of the same result, he gave up and said, God must want you in agriculture. I went on to get my PhD in agricultural economics from Purdue University. Oh boy, I'm so proud of Purdue University, and I want to say that today we have Dean Jay Ackridge and Gebisa Ejeta from Purdue University and all the boiler makers that are here. I feel at home as well. Sometimes we used to beat the guys here, you know. Well, the day I graduated, I sent my father a letter. And I said, dear Dad, I'm a doctor now. You can leave me alone. Well, years after, our first son graduated in the United States as a medical doctor. My father, who was 90 years old at the time, attended the graduation. Now, during the event, he turned and he said, Doctor. I thought he meant me, so I said, yes, Dad. He said, no, I mean your son, the real doctor. We laughed, and I told my dad, well, Dad, even medical doctors will tell you, take your medicines 3 times a day, but only after food. So agriculture is more important than medicine. Well, I must say, I now agree with Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine, who said, let thy food be thy medicine, and thy medicine thy food. These linkages all came back to my memory vividly again when I recently visited Madagascar, now as president of the African Development Bank. I visited one of the irrigated areas funded by the bank. Seeing so many children and their mothers, I beckoned to the kids to come closer. I noticed a very small boy among them. I was so sure he cannot be more than a 5-year-old. His name is Antonio. To my shock, Antonio said he was 13 years old. We all looked at each other, frozen by shock and dismay. Well, the problem of Antonio is stunting from malnutrition. He said to me he would like to be a medical doctor one day. Africa and our world is full of many Antonios who suffer from hidden hunger and malnutrition. To eat well is expensive. Poor households, even when they have access to food, tend to eat a lot more of starchy foods. This can help to reduce hunger, but does not necessarily lead to improved nutrition. The focus, therefore, should not just be on filling the stomach. Focus should be on fueling the body with the right types of foods and nutrients needed for a balanced and healthy living. Take the case in many parts of Asia. The Green Revolution was simply amazing. It raised caloric intake for millions of poor households. However, despite all the gains and the benefits, malnutrition in many places persisted. The same is true in Africa. Production of staple foods such as tubers and maize and millet and sorghum that Gebisa worked so hard on, with striga-resistant sorghum, has risen significantly because of all that research. Yet, malnutrition persists. Africa today accounts for 20 of the 24 countries, with stunting rates of over 40%. Furthermore, 20 of the 34 countries that collectively account for 90% of the world's stunting are in Africa. About 58 million kids in Africa under the age of 5 years are too short for their age, which means they've stunted. 14 million weigh too little for their height, which means they are wasted. And 10 million of them are overweight, obese. Today, millions of kids go blind due to lack of vitamin A. They will not be able to attend school at all the high schoolers we see here today and have a productive life, all because of a basic nutrient like vitamin A. Similarly, millions of mothers die during birth from complications due to lack of vitamin A and iron deficiency. Now, why should a mother die just for bringing a beautiful life to our world? And why must a child's future in that world be mortgaged for lack of basic nutrients for a healthy life? These things should not be. These are very disturbing numbers, and they are numbers that we must change. No child should ever go hungry, and no child should ever lose future economic opportunities or die early because of lack of nutritious food. We must do all possible for the children, from conception to their second birthday. The first 1,000 days in Roger Thoreau's great book told us a lot about that and beyond. And we must support better nutrition for their mothers. A healthy mother who is economically empowered will nourish her children. Malnutrition, ladies and gentlemen, impacts the economy. UNICEF has estimated the annual cost of undernutrition in sub-Saharan Africa at $25 billion. Africa and Asia lose 11% of their GDP every year due to poor nutrition. The evidence is clear. Boosting nutrition boosts the economy. We must change how we look at the problem of malnutrition. The greatest contributor to economic growth is not physical infrastructure, but brain power, what I refer to as gray matter infrastructure. While it is obvious that a road or port can add to improved trade and economic growth, it is often not recognized that stunting shrinks the size of the brain, and you heard it from my friend Jim Kim this morning, and therefore compromises current and future economic growth of nations. Stunted children today leads to stunted economies tomorrow. It is that simple. Therefore, we must redefine the debate around nutrition from one seen from a social development as a social development issue to one that shapes the path of economic growth and development. We must now invest in developing gray matter infrastructure of Africa by investing in better nutrition for its children, who are the future of the continent. Thank you. Access to food in the right quantity and quality is a basic human right. There is absolutely no justification at all that Africa, which has 65% of all the uncultivated arable land left in the world, is unable to feed itself, spending $35 billion a year on food imports, an amount that's projected to rise to $110 billion by 2030 if the current trends continue. Africa can feed itself, and Africa must feed itself. That is why at the African Development Bank, we have set feeding Africa as one of our high-five priorities. Working with governments and partners, and our goal is to help Africa to achieve food self-sufficiency. Not in 30 years, not in 40 years, because I won't be around then. But certainly within 10 years, I'm sure we can do it. That's why when I became president of the bank, I announced that we will invest $24 billion in boosting agriculture, food, and nutrition in Africa over the next 10 years. Thank you. We know the technologies exist to transform African agriculture, but they remain for the most part on the shelves. We must always remember what Norman Borlaug said, and I quote him again: take it to the farmers. To achieve this, the African Development Bank and the Consultative Group on International Agricultural Research, the CGIAR, and many of its DGs are here today, have developed what we call Technologies for African Agricultural Transformation, or TAAT simply. It's a new initiative to scale up appropriate agricultural technologies from the CGIAR and the national systems all across Africa. The bank and its partners, which will include the World Bank, plan to invest $800 million in pushing TAAT. We will promote greater diversity in the production system. Our focus should be on food systems, not just food production. The key is to improve the capacity of the food value chain from the field to the table to produce and deliver healthy and nutritious foods. Poverty is one of the main causes of malnutrition. Caught in poverty traps, many poor households spend most of their income on basic staples, leaving very little, if at all, anything, to even add basic nutritious diets. One of the cheapest ways to provide them with nutritious food is through food fortification. Greater efforts will be placed on boosting access to micronutrients for healthy living. Food fortification, especially adding iodine to salt, staple foods, and cooking oil, is a cost-effective way to get basic nutrients to households. Biofortification will be strongly promoted. The remarkable success of Harvest Plus in developing and disseminating biofortified food crops is highly commendable. Orange-flesh sweet potato, iron-fortified beans, golden rice with high levels of beta-carotene, and yellow cassava, high in beta-carotene, all have great potential in addressing micronutrient deficiencies. As I listened to the talk by DuPont today, I saw the Great work that's also been done on biofortified sorghum, and that's great work as well. These are not just for poor households. They should be promoted for the whole system, for all of us. This will require addressing demand-side constraints and promoting policies that encourage the private sector to incorporate these nutritious crops in processed foods. As we raise agricultural productivity, we will pay greater attention to post-harvest losses, which are estimated at $310 billion in developing countries. Over 60% of this occurs at production and processing stages. Food losses alone per year in Africa is well enough to feed 300 million people. That's way above the 250 million people today that are malnourished. So to achieve improved nutrition, we must reduce food system losses all across the chain, from the farm, storage, transport, processing, and marketing. We will also address the huge problem of aflatoxin contamination of foods, a major source of food insecurity and malnutrition in sub-Saharan Africa. The FAO estimates that a quarter of the world's food crops are affected by aflatoxins each year. Solving this problem requires a multi-sectoral approach linking agriculture, health, and food safety. Now, I know significant progress has been made by the International Institute of Tropical Agriculture in the development of what they call AflaSafe. And with AflaSafe, you're able to actually reduce that loss almost by 100%. The African Development Bank will support African countries to scale up efforts to solve aflatoxin problems, as well as expand private sector investments in AflaSafe manufacturing companies. We need to complement all of this with better food and nutrition policies, as well as greater levels of financing for nutrition. Ladies and gentlemen, the level of financing needed to address malnutrition is huge. It's estimated at $7 billion a year for the next 10 years. Now, that doesn't scare me at all, because I believe that it can be met. To do so, I call for the establishment of nutrition social impact bonds. They will allow countries to raise money to support investments in better nutrition today. The bonds will generate greater social wealth in the future through better health and education outcomes, a more productive workforce with higher income and tax revenues. Nutrition social impact bonds will allow nations to build smart economic future for themselves. We must also equally push harder for political accountability on malnutrition and stunting. That's why I have called for an African Nutrition Accountability Index, which will rank countries based on their progress on malnutrition and stunting. To push for this, we have now established what is called the African Leaders for Nutrition, which will include sitting African presidents, chairperson of the African Union, Dr. Mrs. Dlamini Zuma, Dr. Graça Machel, the former president of South Africa, his wife of former president of South Africa, Mandela, former president of Ghana and World Food Prize winner here, President Kufuor, the former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan, Bill Gates, Aliko Dangote, Jamie Cooper, the Director General of FAO, Graciano da Silva, and myself. I have just asked Ambassador Quinn, President of the World Food Prize Foundation, to join us, and I am very, very delighted he has accepted. Simply help me to thank him for that. We will carry this message from the World Food Prize on Nutrition to Africa. We will be launching this formally at the African Union Summit in January of 2017. The imperative is to support children and their mothers. I firmly believe that we will see greater success of malnutrition and stunting when we provide greater economic empowerment for women. To do this, the African Development Bank has launched what we call the Affirmative Finance Action for Women in Africa, otherwise called AFAWA. But before I go on AFAWA, I must tell you why I launched AFAWA. I walked on a plane in 1995, flying from Lagos to Abidjan. You remember that time we had this computer, it's compact, the one that you carry looks like a suitcase. And I carried it on the plane, and that's all I had. And I tried to sit down. I sat down, and I tried to put it up in the locker over my, compartment. You had all these market women. They come, they wrap all these wrappers around themselves because they don't want to pay taxes and things like that, because it's a way you get around these things. And I was struggling to put it there, and the hostess came to me and said, "Do you need help, sir?" I said, "Yes, I'm trying to get my computer." I was so proud of it, into this compartment. She looked at me and said, "Sir, how many times do you fly this aircraft?" I said, "It depends on where my work takes me." He said, "Take a good look at these women here. They fly this plane every single day. This aircraft is their aircraft. So we're going to take your computer down into the hold and please make space for the women to put up their baskets." So I knew from that time that you had to do great things for women. And that's why we are going to be mobilizing $3 billion in this effort towards women entrepreneurs who do small businesses, including women farmers who produce most of the food in Africa. Thank you. It is time we did big things for women in Africa. Of course, you had President Banda here, fantastic president of Malawi, a woman leader. To be a female president in Africa is not easy. And Madam President, when you were there, you did such a great job, and we're very proud of you. With higher incomes, women mothers will better feed their children, send them to school, and of course, and why not, support better lives as well for their husbands. When we get the issues of women rights, we will get nutrition right. When we get the issues of women rights, we will finally get agriculture in Africa right. As we celebrate the World Food Prize winners this year for their great work on nutritious foods, let us remember Antonio. Let us do all we can to transform agriculture and create new hope and opportunities for millions of kids whose parents depend on agriculture for a living. Let us help ensure we eliminate malnutrition and stunting and build gray matter infrastructure for our world. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you on that screen to Antonio. Here before you is Antonio with me in this photo we took together in Bamangoki in Madagascar. I sure hope he becomes a medical doctor to fulfill his dream. How wonderful will it be to invite Antonio to this place, to the same podium, in future, to speak about food and medicine. And of course, Ambassador Queen, it would be great to have my brother Jim Kim with me at that time to watch him speak. Thank you very much, and God bless you all.
That was wonderful. That was wonderful.
Thank you.
Do you still want to do any questions, or
It's fine.
we're probably out of
Okay.
out of time?
All right. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you again, Mr. President, and that's for inspiring. But let's have another round of applause for President Adesina. I told you, as a man of vision and of action, and this is so exciting. And Mr. President, I want to suggest that the World Food Prize would be a good place to come back even every year, bring President Kim, and it ought to be the place, where we take stock about all these initiatives and that sort of, we're sort of the Switzerland of Africa, and that's there. But all right, thank you, everybody. We're getting close to time to start the afternoon session, so I have a couple of announcements. First of all, Roger Thoreau is hopefully outside with his books, ready to do transactions and sign them for you. So remember that. I've got to be downstairs to greet President Amina Gurib Fakim when she arrives. So Dr. Per Pinstrup Anderson, the 2001 laureate, has agreed to step in and preside over the sessions this afternoon. And finally, all students and teachers from the Global Youth Institute, stay where you are, stay seated, let everybody else go out first, and then you'll be appropriately guided there. Thank you again. Thanks for the soy organizations. Great soy lunch.